Women of Wyoming Then and Now is brought to you by the Wyoming Historical Society and supported in part by a grant from the Wyoming Cultural Trust Fund, a program of the Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources. This program features unique female perspectives on events, themes, or narratives related to state history. We, the host, believe that one woman's action toward a better future can result in a greater legacy that inspires and equips many generations of women to come.
Welcome. I'm Aubrey Edwards, a graduate student at the University of Wyoming, and today's host of Women of Wyoming Then and Now, a program brought to you by the Wyoming State Historical Society. With us now is our special guest, former Secretary of State Kathy Karpan, who I interviewed in her home. Welcome.
Can you tell us about something you've done that will impact future perspectives on Wyoming history, especially for women?
The older you get, and I am definitely older, the more you appreciate that the accomplishments that you took pride in fade over the years because those who follow you exceed. I want to tell a story, which I hope students can really appreciate. The first woman sworn in as governor in the whole country was Nellie Taylor Ross in Wyoming. She wasn't the first elected. There was a woman in Texas elected, but Mrs. Ross won the race to the Bible and got sworn in first. And that was back in 1924, I had the privilege of meeting Nellie Taylor Ross in 1972. And I was introduced by a wonderful gal, Lena Burwell. And as we sat down and chatted, I asked Mrs. Ross, what was the greatest honor? You were First Lady, you were first woman governor in the country, you were Vice Chair of the National Democratic Party, Director of the Mint. And she said, no, none of those. The greatest honor I had was having a lake named for me in Yellowstone National Park. The reason I say that is that no matter how hard we try to accomplish something in political life or otherwise, others will outdo it. It will be forgotten. There are some things that are done, the Washington Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, but most of us, it's dust that flies into the air. So I don't know that I can say I've left any great impact, but somewhere along this narrative, there should be a story about what I accomplished, however short-lived in its duration. When I was in office, what did I do? And that's, I don't know, maybe that's a different tape, but.
Well, tell us.
Well, I don't know. This can put people to sleep in 2 minutes, but, no, I tell you, but seriously, when I became director of the Department of Health and Social Services, one of the things I did was to totally revamp their budget. I mean, I sat down and read that budget. It was a total bore. I mean, first of all, what I understood was boring. Most of it was gobbledygook. And mind you, I was the director. I just got the job. I mean, the governor appointed. And I thought, you know what? If I don't understand it, I have 3 college degrees. How do I expect those legislators to understand it? And they've got a lot of demands on it. So we did it. And so what we did is we thought, let's give a very brief description of what each of these programs does. How is it funded? Federal, state, what percentage? Do we charge fees? And then describe what the services are. And then say, if you get less than the budget is requesting, what will you do? Cut services? Collapse, eliminate some, but keep, When I got done with that, in a later budget hearing, the Appropriations Committee said, we want the University of Wyoming to follow this because we understand this. That's one thing. Two, Secretary of State, I helped work us through the first in Wyoming statewide special election. The election season is 6 months long. We had to collapse it into 40 days. So we made law. I was Secretary of State when we reapportioned the state. Before that, when Wyoming elected senators or representatives to the state legislature, the boundaries were counties, county lines. So, for example, Teton County, that had 3,000 people, had 2 senators, and Laramie County, that had 60,000 people, had 2 senators. Now, if you do the math, that means that the people in Teton County had 20 times the representation. Well, the U.S. Supreme Court said you can't do that anymore. And so the legislature was forced to reapportion into districts that were population equivalent. So they had the same number of people. Each representative or senator had an equivalent number of voters. So it wasn't an imbalance as it had been for 100 years. I could go on, the Office of Surface Mining, $100 million increase in funding for abandoned mine lands. The first time in history we ever gave grants to community-based environmental groups trying to clean up water that had been ruined because of mining. Let me give an example. A teacher in Appalachia in southeastern Ohio said to me, let me tell you about what mining, the impacts it creates. You know how kids, you all did this? You draw a little house and you have smoke coming out, well, in the old days, and some mountains over here and then a little river running through. Her children colored the river orange because that is what acid mine drainage did. We went out, we had a community-based group, they put in a limestone filter in a stream. Dirty water came and went through the limestone filter, came out clean. There was a gentleman there in his 70s, which I used to think was old. Now I don't. He had tears in his eyes. I said, "You're so moved." He said, "You know what? I have lived here all my life. I've never seen clean water in this stream." So these are the things that we did. We allowed remining. We went to abandoned mines that were still coal in there. All right, industry ready to give you a carrot. You can go in a mine, but you've got to clean it up. Super nice when you're done. So there were things that we were able to do. And the beauty of that, to me, was, if you want to know in a nutshell what an interest in politics can do, think about this. My grandparents came from Croatia and Slovenia. It was called the Austrian Empire then, Austro-Hungarian. They came to this country to mine coal. So I grew up coal mining. My dad was injured in a coal mine. I played on the slack, which is the spent soil from the coal mines, when I was a kid. My boss, Tina Roncalio, sponsored the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act, which included money to clean up the abandoned mine lands in Rock Springs that caused subsidence, that caused the orange streams. And what do you know? I wind up being the director of the federal agency that supervises, oversees that program. So, tell me, when they get off the gangplank, my grandparents, they might have said, "Oh, one of your children is going to be in charge of cleaning up the coal mines." And they go, "Wait, we got a shocker. It's not going to be a boy, it's going to be a girl that did it. How about that? Is that America or is that America? Huh? It's a great country."
That's absolutely amazing. What about, you're in history books. It's visibility. You were doing some work that women had not previously been doing.
Well, now, okay. If you want me to answer what impact I've had in terms of women being involved in politics. That's something I can answer. I grew up with a tremendous interest in politics, which eventually led to my running for office in the state of Wyoming. I ran for Secretary of State. Now, in Wyoming, we don't have a lieutenant governor. There are only 3 states that don't have a lieutenant governor. Wyoming is one of them. So in Wyoming, we have the governor, the Secretary of State, then the auditor, the treasurer, the superintendent of public instruction. The Secretary of State in Wyoming has a number of duties, but one of them is being the acting governor whenever the governor is disabled or out of the state, and upon the death or agreed upon disability, the Secretary of State becomes governor. So that's the second ranking office. That's what I ran for. And when I ran for it, this is the role of women in Wyoming. We were the first state in the union. Oh, back up. We were the first state. No, we got to back up farther. The first government in the history of the world who ever gave women full political rights. And that was in 1869 when the territory of Wyoming was created. Now, some states, New Zealand, they could vote on some things. New Jersey, other states, they could vote in school district elections. But Wyoming said women have all rights. They can vote, they can hold office holders. 1869. And we did have, in 1890, the first state admitted to the Union where women could vote. That was a very controversial matter. And so our representative in Congress is a man named Joseph Carey, and he wrote a telegram to the Wyoming Territorial Legislature and said, we may have trouble getting into the Union because we let women vote. What if you drop that and then we'll deal with that later? And the Wyoming legislature, I've never seen evidence, but legend goes, sent a telegram back and said, Wyoming is prepared to wait 100 years if need be. We are not coming in without the women. And that was about the last progressive thing that Wyoming ever did. So, over the years, women in politics, if you were talking about superintendent of public instruction, many women ran. In fact, it's the rarity when a man would hold that position. But for the others, I was the first woman elected to an office other than superintendent who wasn't a widow, who in effect had the benefit of her husband having held office before her. So in that respect, I think my, I don't know if you call it a legacy, but my message to women in Wyoming would be, don't be afraid to run. Take the chance, you might win. I jumped off the cliff, I ran, I wasn't a widow, I got out there. I'm a Democrat, why did I run? We had like 35% of the voters in Wyoming were Democratic. I ran. I'd like to think my legacy would be jump in, get involved, run. And you know what? If you lose, it's not fatal. Trust me, I've lost a couple of times. It isn't. The important thing, Teddy Roosevelt, remember the great quote, get in the arena, get in there, fight. You know, struggle for a great cause, and if you're defeated, you gave your best effort. And that's my feeling about politics and life, so take a chance. And here's one thing. Here is one thing I did, which I want to say. When I was in public office, I must have given, I'm not exaggerating, 1,000 speeches. And I would say a significant number were to audiences of women and youngsters. Commencements, probably at 25 that I did. And I would always wind up giving these 3 points, which in retrospect, I realized I lived my life on. One is to believe in yourself. Second is invest in yourself. And to me, fundamentally, that means get an education. But it means many other things. Not everyone's for college. It might mean a trade school, an art school. It might be getting into a job where you can advance over the years. And the last one is, if you've done the first two, take a chance, take a risk, don't be afraid.
Thank you so much for that.
I know, I mean, I seriously.
I love it. Thank you, Kathy. We think it's very important to remind our listeners that our past informs our present. If you could elaborate on the background, culture, or context that inspired or required you to pursue the actions you took.
This is like a final exam in philosophy. And the correct answer is why not or because. Okay, no, but I will take it seriously. Why do you become the people who become? You know, I actually think it's possible that we are born not only with personalities, but maybe a destiny. I don't know. I mean, what can I tell you? I was in the first grade. I am not kidding about this. And Georgie Brent, the guy gave me my first kiss. But that was in the second grade, but we were arguing about who should be elected president. My dad was for Harry Truman. His dad was for Tom Dewey. Now, I tell you, anyone who is arguing in first grade about politics must have gotten it at home. And I did. My parents were first-generation Americans. All my grandparents were born in the old country. And I think I mentioned to you earlier that I think people may not believe it now, but I believe immigrants are great patriots because they came to this country from effort, not because their parents brought them into this world. They made an effort to get here because they believed in a better life, be it economic advancement, religious or political freedom, whatever it is. They're great patriots. I grew up in a family where we talked about current events all the time. And the other great influence was Representative Tina Roncalli, another immigrant child, first-generation American, who was elected to the U.S. House for 5 terms. But when I went to work for him, I not only saw the love of politics from my dad, the idea of JFK that politics can be a noble calling in a really intellectual and universal sense. But with Tino, I saw that it could also help individual human beings. Because when I worked for him, we helped constituents. But there's no doubt about it. I was born and will die with an interest in politics.
I love that you grew up in a political household. I think that's amazing. And an informed household.
Oh, yes.
That's incredible. How do you hope your contributions will be interpreted or realized as in the future? In other words, and this is when we talk about your legacy, right? We touch a little bit on this, but what is the legacy that you want to be a part of?
If I were writing a will to the next generation, I think I would say, as I said earlier, the most important thing is, even if you don't get this encouragement at home, you've got to believe in yourself. Do not let others define what you can be. I think dreams are important. I'll tell you something. You can't do everything you dream. I used to dream when I was a kid that I could jump off our garage and just fly all the way up to St. Cyril Methodius School. And I never could, of course, but so I couldn't do everything I dreamed. But I'll tell you what, I didn't do anything in my life I didn't first dream. What matters is you find some way, someone, something that makes you want to dream what you can be. Now, it may not turn out. You may start in this direction and go, oh no, that's what I'm going to. But start out with some dreams. Don't look at life as an ordeal, as a sentence you serve on earth. Think of it as an adventure, as an unveiling of what you are to be every day. Everything you learn, everything that happens to you is opening up. That would be the most important thing. I think the second thing I would say is, if you think that you can just sit back and dream and not do anything, you aren't going very far. You won't get off the couch. You have got to put an effort in. That's what I call investment. If school isn't for you in the academic sense, and you've got to get some kind of training, you've got to go to a trade school, you've got to be be an apprentice to a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter. Find some skill that you can build on. Don't think the world owes you a living. You've got to earn a living. And earn means you've got to make an effort. But then the most important thing, and I've lived my life on this principle, is you've got to take a chance. You've got to take a risk, even if you fail. And I know it's a cliche, but it is really true. You learn more from failure than you do from success. Because when you succeed, you go, well, there, I had it. That was good. When you fail, you go, what happened? What did I do wrong? What could I do better? So failure is not to be feared. It's part of life. That's the way it goes. I would say to you kids, here's what I would say. That'd be my bottom line of all this is. You're a young student, and you think, I don't want to be in politics. Everyone's screaming and shouting. They're saying bad things about each other. They don't believe in our country anymore. They don't believe in our elections. No, that's not true. That's not true. This is, President Lincoln said, the last best hope of the world. And we are, and we still are. And I'll tell you what, politics is still a noble calling, and we still need the best and the brightest and the most caring and generous and tolerant and loving of our young people to come in and say, no, you know what, if it's not good, then let's make it good. Let's make it not only good, let's make it better. And so I would encourage young people, and in this I say, not women only, men as well, not boys, but girls too, should all think about at some point. Now maybe they won't have a career. They might be on the school board. They might be on the library board. Some way, they might be working for a nonprofit. But do something with your life that's beyond getting and spending.
Yeah.
But giving.
I love that. I love that.
Amen.
Thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Preach. Hold on, not yet.
I thought it was done.
Almost. So this last, and I think you've kind of touched on this, but we can kind of recap. And this is the last question for the Historical Society. Now, more than ever, we can access a wealth of historical data and stories from women who came before us. But unless we continue to preserve those voices and memories, we run the risk of losing meaningful female representation. In one or two thoughts, can you share your encouragement or advice for others who may wish to preserve, correct, or explore their personal, local, or ancestral history?
Well, I think the most encouraging thing, well, there are many encouraging things, but one of the most encouraging things in my lifetime has been the idea that everyone in a community has something to give. There was a time in this country when you could not vote if you were not a white, male, property-owning citizen. But that's what I love about democracies. They're not chiseled in stone. They evolve, and they get better and better and better. what we're doing, what is great about evolving in America, is that young people should grow up with the idea that these artificial distinctions between us really don't matter. If you really want to think about America in a broader term than political freedom, which is huge. I mean, it's tremendous. Freedom, liberty, democracy, the Bill of Rights. But in the broader sense, it's the belief in human progress. It's the belief in the potential of every human being. No matter what they speak, no matter what their color.
That's all the time that we have for today's interview, but we are certain there's much more to be learned from your experience. We are delighted to have the opportunity to pass these stories down to others who may have questions and want to look further into either your life or into the lives of those in their own personal past.